Hello, hello, my sweet reader friends, and welcome to my top 10 reads of 2024. It's that time of year where we do the hardest job of choosing what our favorite books of the year were. And when I tell you this is literally the hardest, at least for me, the hardest job as a reader. Like, how do I have like a top 15 and then I have like a top 5, but it's like, it's so hard to choose because I like certain books in different ways, you know? So just starting off, after I am in the middle of one read right now, and we do have about 10 days left of the year. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that I will have read 70 books by the year's end, probably more. No, I know I'll be reading more than that, but right now, 70 books read in 2024. So going into some quick Fable stats, looks like my average rating was 3.8, which seems right. I didn't have the best reading year this year. I mean, I did find some gems, but I also, for the most part, just did not have a great reading year. And this is also something that I really like to see, and that's the authors that I've read. So my top 2 authors of the year were Adrienne Young and Frida McFadden, which I'm genuinely not surprised. And I read 3 books each by those authors. With it being the end of the year as well, Fable recently just released a new really fun feature that's like the bookish take on Spotify Wrapped, but it's reading wrap. And it is such a fun and cute feature. And Fable is actually kindly the sponsor of today's video, which I'm so excited to be working with them again, especially to showcase this really fun new feature. No matter how many books that you've read, your reading wrap celebrates your reading journey and just your reading in general this year. This reading wrap was so fun because I kind of got to see like which moods I was in, what my best and worst months were, and overall just kind of like what reader I was during the year. Fable is constantly rolling out new features that make the app fun and personable to each user. It also helps you read a lot more because you can track your reading streaks, you can make all different kinds of lists, and you can even join or create your own book club. I do have my own book club on Fable, which I will link below. They are truly the ultimate all-in-one platform for readers, and if you needed any more convincing, Fable also has half and quarter star ratings alongside a way more customizable rating and review process, unlike some other reading apps out there. Not pointing fingers. Using Fable also helps support a small business that is woman-owned, and you know I'm all about supporting small businesses. It's also so easy to import your Goodreads data, so when you make the switch, you don't have to go and do everything manually. You can just import all of your stuff automatically. You can get started with Fable for free today using the link in my description, and if you are new to Fable, the reading wrap is a perfect way to start off using and seeing their fun features. Thank you so much to Fable for sponsoring today's video. I absolutely love using your app and working with you guys. So now that we've gone through some stats in my reading wrap, let's get into my top 10 books of the year. Starting off with some honorable mentions, we have The Teacher by Frida McFadden. This one, I did not know if I was going to love. Okay, let me just preface this by saying that this book is icky. This book, I do not approve of literally anything that happens in this book, but for some reason, the way that it was done, I just read through it so quickly. I'm not really gonna go into depth on what these books are about, but basically this one follows more like 2 POVs, kind of 3, sometimes 3 POVs, and we have a wife, her husband, and then one of their students, because they are both teachers at this school, and this other girl kind of has a bad reputation when it comes to teachers. That's all I'm really gonna say because I don't know what else I can say without giving spoilers. I rated this book a 4.5. I just ate it up. The next honorable mention that I have is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches. This was so hard because I did give this book 5 stars, and it did like, oh, just give me that 5-star feeling, but I don't know if I would consider it my top 10. But it's almost there. Like it's literally tied with some other books. This one is a cozy adult fantasy romance kind of about our main character who is realistically a witch, but online she like pretends to be a witch, like on TikTok or something. And then some secret little society of sorts kind of brings her in to try and teach these younger witches. It was so cozy. The romance was so cute. I loved these characters so much. It was very much found family, very much like an unconventional group of oddball fun people. And it was just so much fun and just adorable. And my next one, oh, I wanted this to be in the top 10, but I just can't, like, it was almost there. But that's Assistant to the Villain. I recently read this one in one of my recent vlogs, and this one is another adult kind of funny, cozy fantasy type of deal about a girl who gets a job as an assistant to the villain, but she obviously is like very attracted to this villain, her boss, but someone tries to take his empire down, so she kind of has to figure out like what's going on. I just loved the characters. The humor was so fun in this, and the ending literally left me like jaw dropped. Like I needed to go into the next book immediately, which I will be reading very, very soon. I gave this one, I think, a 4.5 because I did just have some plot issue. Like the plot itself just wasn't my favorite, but everything else I just absolutely loved about it. it. Okay, but now going into my actual top 10 reads of 2024. These are in no particular order. I mean, I do have like a technical top 5, but for the most part, these aren't really like in order. So the first one that I have is A Court of Mist and Fury. I did not know how I was going to like this series because for some reason I just have a weird thing with hyped up books and hyped up book series, but this one actually just really worked for me. I didn't love the first book. I think I gave it like a 3.5 stars, but the second book, very fast paced, so much happened. I loved the romance. It was just a good time. And now I'm going to be reading A Court of Wings and Ruin very, very soon. I'm definitely not like obsessed with it by any means. It was really good, I will admit, but I'm not really obsessed with these characters or this world or anything, but it was good. I will give them that. And then next, I know these are 2 books, but I do have the Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, both books. So I have the first one and then Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands. These books I gave a 4.5 star, but the world and the characters like stuck with me all year long. Like I think about this world and these characters so often that even though they weren't technically 5-star reads, they are 5 stars in my heart. I did have some plot issues. I don't feel like the plot was very strong, so that's why I didn't give it a 5-star, but everything else about it is 5 stars for me. So maybe I should just make it a 5-star, but I was trying to be very like specific about my 5-star reads this year. I don't know what it is about this world and these characters, but it makes me feel at home. Like it makes me feel like a warm hug. It makes me feel understood and it makes me feel seen, and it also just really connects me to my inner child. So there was just things that happened to me while reading these books that I can't even explain, so they are just in my top favorites of all time. And the third book comes out very, very soon, which I'm very excited about. But these are adult cozy fantasies that follow this girl that is a professor, and she's on a journey to writing the first encyclopedia of fairies in the fairy world. I cannot recommend it enough. The next one that I have is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I did read this in my like Barnes & Noble or like bookstore employees choose my reads for a week, and this book is about our main character who wakes up in a spacecraft and he has no idea who he is, no idea why he's there, but he pretty much has to figure out a way to save the world. This book was so fun, so fast paced. It was also in a funny way very cozy and humorous. I love Andy Weir's writing so much, and there's just a specific character and a specific relationship in this book that I just adored so very much, and literally nothing else can compare to this book. That's all I have to say. My next top book of 2024 is That's Not My Name by Megan Laley. This one is a YA mystery thriller, and this one follows a girl who wakes up on the side of the road. She cannot remember her name, how she got there. She has no idea what's going on. So an officer ends up picking her up and taking her down to the station, and then a man comes and claims that he is her father. He's got all the documentation, and then on the other side we have, I believe his name is Drew, and Drew's girlfriend went missing not too long ago, and everybody thinks that Drew is responsible for her disappearance. So we're kind of following these 2 characters, and the way that they come together and the ending is just was so shocking for me. And this book was so ridiculously fast paced that I binged it in 24 hours. I was absolutely obsessed, and she has a new book coming out, I think in January as well. So very excited to pick that one up as well. The next one that I have is The Spell Shop, and this one, this one is the same thing like with Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I don't even know like how to explain like what this book did to me. It reconnected me with my inner child. It made me feel seen and understood, and I'm noticing a pattern when it comes to my favorite books of all time, or at least this year. The books that I have found that have been my favorite are these cozy kind of fantasy books with characters who are very different, you know, from your average female, I guess, or just character in general. Like they have certain things that they're very, very passionate about. They are kind of socially awkward. There's different kind of magical elements that really speak to, you know, creativity and imagination. And there's just something about these books that really speaks to my soul. And so this one follows our main character who flees like the capital of her city, I guess, so to say. And she goes to another island, which is where she was born. And on that island, she opens this like magical jam shop where she does actually sell jam and grows a garden with her own berries and everything. But that is kind of a mask for what she's actually selling, and that is like remedies for the land. Because when she escaped, she was a librarian, and when she escaped the capital because there was like some rebellion or something, like something was going on to where she had to flee. Because she was a librarian, she took the really important spell books with her so that they wouldn't burn or get destroyed like in this, you know, fight that's going on. So in those books there is like remedies, and in her hometown where she was born, they are very much struggling with like growing crops. There's like magical storms happening. So she really wants to kind of like help the land by, you know, selling these things, but it's technically illegal to do so if you're not like a sorcerer or something. I don't know, just the characters and the relationships. It was found family. It was kind of like breaking out of your shell and learning to love and learn how to be loved. The magicalness was so much fun. The lush like greenery and scenery and all that was just beautiful in my brain. And one of the best parts is she has a little sidekick who is a sentient spider plant. And I have so many spider plants around my room. So after that, I was just like, this is so much fun. I think about my spider plants now as like sentient beings, and I'm like, I wish you could talk like that. Anyway, the next one that I have is The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young. This is why I read a lot of Adrienne Young's other books, and honestly did not really like the other books. This is kind of like her one that I really adore, and I know she's coming out with a new one if she hasn't already. It's like The Sea of Unspoken Things or something. But this one follows our main character June, and in her family, the women are cursed with kind of like going mad. Like it's sort of like an Alice in Wonderland type of syndrome, I guess. So June starts seeing this red door appear, and that is something that's kind of like part of the curse, I guess. So one day she just decides to go through this door and just see what happens. This book was a little bit hard to understand. Sometimes if you've read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. But the reason I love this book so much is because it mixed all the things that I love about books. It was magical realism. It was mystery thriller. Not as much thriller. More like murder mystery. It was a little bit of romance. It was a little bit like literary fiction. And I loved it so much. I thought the story was so beautifully written, and I genuinely cannot like recommend this enough. And the book itself is just absolutely gorgeous. The next one that I have is The Ornithologist Field Guide to Love. I also recently read this one. It was, I think, a 4.5 or 4.75 star read for me, but it's another one of those ones that I'm kind of bordering on 5 stars because there was some plot issues. Like, I just didn't really love the plot as much. I thought there was some areas that was kind of slow and some areas that didn't really make that much sense. But the banter, the relationship, like the romance in this book was so fun, and I really loved the little magical element of like the magical birds, because this book is an adult, it's technically an adult romance, but it is like a fantasy romance, but not like a romantasy, you know, if that makes sense. So we're following our two main characters who are ornithologists, and there is this like competition to find the specific bird, and you get like ornithologist of the year or something. So our two main characters are kind of forced to team up in order to win, and they're rivals. So this is like a rivals to lovers type of deal. The conversations that were had, and again, the banter, the humor, so good. I posted on my story when I was reading this, and I was like, I don't want smut unless it's whatever this is. And it says, he wanted to undress her brain, stroke her perspective, make her gasp at the most fascinating theory she hid from all other men. And like, it's just stuff like that where it's not like icky smut, but it's like he was so intrigued by her brain and the way her brain worked, and I just love that. I don't know what it is about that I love so much, but I'm like, if I ever read, I don't like reading smut, but if I read romance, I want it like that. For some reason, I feel like I'm talking about way more than 10 books, but I have 3 more to talk about. And again, these aren't in any particular order, but the next one that I have is Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This one is another one that I gave like a 4.5 because some plot issues, but everything else just stuck in my brain and in my soul for so long. This follows our main character Dora, who when she was younger, a fairy king or prince or something came and like stole half of her soul. So she goes through life kind of struggling to have the like correct and proper, you know, reactions and emotions, and she's just socially different than everybody else, which after reading this, I did some research, and it is kind of like a representation of neurodivergence, which made me love this book so much more because we all know I'm neurodivergent. So I just love books with like neurodivergent characters, and I feel like this had such a beautiful representation of that. But anyway, our main character eventually meets, I don't know if I'm saying this word right, but it's sorcier or sorcerer. It's not sorcerer, it's Sorcier. I'm not even gonna try and say what that is. But she meets him at some point, and he is also a very like socially ill-mannered man. So you can only imagine the conversations and the banter in this book between two people, and it's also like in the 1800s or something. So this is like when times were supposed to be like prim and proper and, you know, all that jazz. So you could only imagine what the banter's like in this book with two sort of technically ill-mannered characters. But I feel like this book just had so many beautiful and profound quotes and conversations and sayings, and it genuinely just made me feel so warm and fuzzy, and also broke my heart in ways, but also put me back together. I don't know how to explain it, but I love this book so much. The next one that I have is Emily Henry's Funny Story. This was my first Emily Henry read. Since then, I have read Beach Read as well, and I feel like it depends on which one you read first, but I like this one so much more than Beach Read. Don't attack me for that, but I don't know what it was about this book. I think just the characters in general, I feel like I connected to way more. And this story was just a lot more fun and different than, you know, your average romance. So this follows our two main characters, Daphne and Miles. And Daphne was engaged to this one guy who left her for his best friend. So Daphne ends up living with her new fiance's ex, which is Miles, because that was like technically her fiance's house, and then she didn't really have anywhere to live, so she ended up living with the new fiance's ex because they both got left. So it kind of just made sense. And then obviously they end up falling for each other, and their story is just so cute. I also love how this was so funny, but it also had a lot of emotional depth. Like, our characters had a lot of depth. And I feel like I also just connected with Miles in a certain way because he has a specific like issue with one of his family members. And I feel like that just spoke to my personal experiences as well with one of my parents. So I don't know, again, just connected with these characters in a really special way and ended up just absolutely adoring that book. And I believe the last one that I have to talk about is the reappearance of Rachel Price. This one is Holly Jackson's newest release, and it follows our main character who is 16, I believe, years old, and when she was a baby, her mother just like up and disappeared. But one day, like 15, 16 years later, she ends up coming back and just like randomly showing up on their doorstep. So throughout this whole book, we're trying to figure out like what the heck happened to you and like where have you been? The plot twists were pretty crazy in this book. I, for the most part, liked the characters weren't like my favorite, but I did like our characters, and the ending honestly kind of made me tear up. There were certain parts where it did get kind of slow, but for the most part I feel like I blew through this book pretty quickly. Oh my gosh, I lied. I have one more that I did not talk about, and that is Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. This has become my new ultimate favorite YA romance. This book follows the main character, Liz, and Liz has recently gone through some trauma. Her mother recently died, and so she's kind of going through like the process of losing her parent, and that's really hard, especially because this is, I believe, her senior year. She is a huge romantic. Her and her mom used to love watching romance movies, so she has this like perfect kind of story, like romance story in her head. And so one day her childhood crush comes back to the neighborhood, or maybe just comes back to her school. I can't remember exactly what happened. And he is friends with Liz's neighbor, who she's kind of like rivals with in a way. So she tries to get her neighbor to kind of hook her up with her childhood crush. But during that whole time, she realized that she actually likes to be around her neighbor, Wes. So the little bottom last sentence says, as they continue to grow closer, she must re-examine everything she thought she knew about love and rethink her own perception of what happily ever after should really look like. Oh my gosh, this book was just so adorable. I absolutely fell in love with these characters. Wes and Liz are my absolute favorite little duo, like little YA romance couple ever. So now, if we're talking about top 5, I would say Better Than the Movies, The Reappearance of Rachel Price, The Unmaking of June Farrow, Project Hail Mary, and The Spell Shop are probably my top 5. But anyway, guys, that is my top 10 reads of 2024. Let me know in the comments down below what your favorite books were of the year and if we had any in common. I'm so excited for 2025 and all of the reading and reading plans that I have going into the new year. It's gonna be so good. It's gonna be so fun. Thank you guys so much for watching and being here and supporting me. I love you guys to the moon and back, and to the moon again and back again. And I will see you guys in my next video. Mwah!